the Houthis had so many enemies. Once the Houthis won over the capital, this whole area here, the Saudis led an intervention to try and get rid of the Houthis. And that coalition involved it involved Saudi, it involved the Emirates, it involved Sudan, Bahrain, Kuwait, Qatar, Egypt, Jordan, Morocco, like Senegal, yeah, all these countries. So many different Arab countries wanted to knock off the Houthis. They still managed to take over all the way to the south. They even actually got close, I think, to taking over Aden in 2015. But the Houthis survived. The fact is that this war has been going on for like 10 years. And I think the Saudis have just kind of given up on trying to defeat the Houthis. I think the consensus is that the Houthis are here to stay. Yemen stuff. So I'll show you what I've done. I've just done like a basic run through the fucking Yemeni history of like, I don't know, all the ancient shit where it was, again, it's like, I think the big thing with Yemen is that, look at this, they built a fucking dam in like the year 900. Look at that, that's so cool. I don't know, like different kingdoms only governing like small parts of the area. I think until Islam became a thing in Yemen, a lot of the different tribes were just very, very disconnected. So as far as the Islamic conquest of Yemen, it seemed to be like it was quite amicable. Like it seemed to be that these guys were pretty much okay with Muslims, with Muslim rule in the area because it provided stability and just shit like that. Yeah. There are a bunch of different dynasties, though. A lot of them fought with each other. And I think one of the more common threads about Yemeni history is just that because of the different tribal factions and the different like geographical areas across the country, it seems to be that like it's been very difficult for any one group at any one extended period of time to actually establish full control over the area, because it seems to be that these places are just too different, or they have too many different incentives, or just too geographically different. Yeah, I don't know, but it just seems to be that the amount of like fucking tribal warfare here is like insane. With the Ottomans like had a horrible time of trying to control Yemen. They managed to control some parts. They were often pushed out, or they would control parts and then they were pushed out eventually. So that was a whole thing as well. Like there was this big rebellion by this guy here, Al-Mansur al-Qasim, who took over the highlands in Yemen. And then at some point, they even kicked the Ottomans out. And then this, I think, was like the kind of like greater Yemen state. Because I think if I look up state Yemen, like if you look at the borders for this state, they controlled like all this. And I think the tribe that controlled this, not really a tribe, it was like a Shiite sect, wasn't it? The Zaydis. They controlled all this like greater Yemen, they called it. So at one point, it was a pretty large kingdom. But Yemen's little monopoly on coffee got fucked over by the Europeans. They had a very bad succession, sort of like they had mechanism. So there was a lot of like family disputes. It got very like Game of Thrones. That was kind of a part of it as well. There was people declaring themselves sultans like independently. I think the Ottomans made future pops at taking the place back. Like here, the Viceroy of Egypt went in and took over like in the 1800s, the Viceroy of Egypt basically reclaimed a bunch of this for the Ottomans. So it's switching hands like a lot, like in not that much time. And it's also been very coveted in some parts, especially on the coast because of its situation here, especially when the Suez Canal opens and lots of boats are coming in through the Red Sea. And right down here, it's kind of important what's going on in Yemen. Stability is important. Same with like Ethiopia. There's also a whole thing with like the Kingdom of Aksum in like in like really long time, like olden days, and the Romans getting involved here as well, and lots of like very close cultural connections between the Yemenis and the like Ethiopian kingdoms. But I think going on to the Ottomans, this is kind of like the first thing I'm noticing that makes me think of Houthis for some reason. Like, was when the Ottomans divided Yemen into like the Yemen Vilayet, because that's what they were called in the Ottoman Empire. They used a lot of like divide and conquer strategies to keep groups split apart, but there were kind of like two governances happening here. So you had the Ottomans running, I think, around this area here, like the north, but then down here in this part was where you had the British controlling Aden, and then in the surrounding area, the way that the British managed to claim like the 9 different protectorates in this area was that they just went to each different tribe and offered them protection and trade access in exchange for them being like submitting to British rule, basically. So they kind of all accepted that, and that's how Britain had their stronghold in Aden. And Aden ended up becoming this very like open international city with immigrants from like India and from Africa and all that. So that was like you've got the British Empire down here, you've got the Ottomans up here, but you've got like a couple of pretty important divides. You've got like the north-south divide is a big thing, but also maybe even more important is you've got this like coastal divide. The coast here, coastal cities, and the people who live in this mountainous highland area here. That's kind of like where I think the two big divides are in Yemeni politics. And it seems to be very recurring. This part here, like not many people give a fuck about this area because it's like just not many people live there. Most of the population lives around here. But yeah, it was 1904, 1911. It was this guy here, Imam Yahya. These names, like Yemeni names, are so much harder than like other like Arab names, like Hamidadin. Hamidadin, I don't know, but he manages to unite the northern tribes. Causes a huge mess for the Ottomans. He cost the Ottomans lose about 10,000 soldiers a year fighting this guy off. But he claims much of the Northern Highlands, and then once the Ottomans fuck off in 1918, this guy takes over. And this guy is like he's like basically an Islamic theocrat, like very authoritarian, like monarchist. He has this very romantic attachment to grabbing back like the idea, like Greater Yemen, like this, to have all this back. And he is from the same, I think he's from the same group, the Zaidis that the Houthis are from. I think he's from the same area, definitely, like in the north, because this is where the Houthis first emerged here as well. I'm just wondering if there's much of a connection though, because I can't really see much of a connection other than that they just had those two things in common, that they're from like the same Shia sect and that they're from the north. But I don't really know if this guy here, this ruler, has anything to do with like the Houthis, or if they care about him, or if they have the same aspirations for Greater Yemen from Asir to Dhofar. Like I don't know. But he attempts to take back the 9 protectorates from the British. They fuck him off. He gets into a bit of an alliance with Italy, actually, because Italy wants to have a sphere of influence in Yemen, because that would connect them to Somalia and Ethiopia. And what happens with this guy? Oh yeah, Yahya also fights with the Saudis, with Ibn Saud, and then they lose this part to the Saudis, Asir and Najran. So that's how this becomes part of Saudi Arabia, is they fight with this Shiite guy over here. And what else happens? Let's go. Yeah, he cedes. He cedes these parts that become part of Saudi, and he also cedes Aden. So this is from the 30s to the 40s with this guy in charge. So he goes from basically controlling all of this. They're not the same family. Are they the same sect of Shiite though, Zaidis? Is that wrong, or that's what I wanted to know? I don't actually know the connection, if there is any. So yeah, this guy controls all of this, and then I think within about 10, 15 years, it becomes that. So this is where you get like the north-south Yemen, because these two kingdoms would eventually become countries. What else is there? There's a coup. Oh yeah, Yahya gets opposed by a Zaidi prince. I think he gets assassinated in 48, doesn't he? But then his son takes over. And this guy is a bit more modernist, although he still has like a very strict regime. Like even for mundane decisions, people still need to go through his approval. He clashes with the British a lot. Bans like listening to the radio in public spaces. But I think at some point, eventually get to a stage where Yemen basically becomes 2 states, like recognized states. So here, that guy, Imam Yahya, he gets, his son gets overthrown by Republicans who are quite close to Egypt, I think. Yeah, they're supported by Egypt. And here, the British get off and replaced by effectively like socialists. Like they get that, because I think the People's Democratic Republic of Yemen was one of the only, or maybe the only Arab state that was like directly like socialist, like formally socialist, and also very very close with the Soviets. So you have these two regions here, like two separate states, and they both kind of get formed around the same time. This place gets formed in about 67, 68, and the same thing with this. Like the British get like the revolt against the British ends in 67, I think. Yeah. So you have these two areas. They do end up fighting quite a lot over these borders because I guess the borders were drawn pretty like arbitrarily and just over like fighting and shit like that. And they kind of both envisioned like themselves being part of like having a more cohesive like Yemeni society. So they do fight quite a bit in the 70s and the 80s. And I think eventually it's somewhere a point in the 80s when North Yemen gets a lot of oil revenue because they discover a lot of oil in the northern area, but they also find oil close to the border, or like there's oil exploration near to the border. And I think it's like in the 80s when these two warring states decide that it'd be better to unify than to fight. They just decide that collectively. So they form like a constitution, and then they become like the Republic of Yemen. So Yemen only becomes a country in 1990. I actually didn't know it was that recent. Until 1990, you had North Yemen and like the more Soviet-backed like South Yemen. And then this is where I think the problems start to emerge, is because North Yemen during the 80s had a population of about 12 million people. Again, this part only had 3 million. So again, because most of the population is in the highlands and the coast. So the map's a bit deceiving, but you have these two countries that merge together. The North, having not been like a Soviet socialist state, basically, and having oil, has huge advantages. And the South kind of gets fucked over in the political system, especially when they have elections. And these guys are mostly represented. These guys would have been like, they would have had like 50-50 parity, but the problem was that there was also Islamists who gathered a lot of votes. So it just made it harder for the people in the South to establish like strong political representation, or to feel like they were politically represented. So it's a very shaky union, very sectarian. Still, like, I think there's a civil war in 94, but leading up before that, I think the really, really big split actually comes partly because of oil fields that are brought in the South, but they end up funneling most of the money to the North. At least that's how people in the South put it. The elections don't really give the Yemeni Socialist Party, that represents a lot of the South, that much representation, because they're kind of like fucked out of it by the Islamists, who get about the same level of support. But there's also in 1990, and I definitely didn't know about this, was that during the Gulf War, when Saddam attacked Kuwait, Yemen stayed neutral. They didn't join the coalition against Saddam. And Saudi got so fucking mad at that they deported 800,000 Yemeni nationals and workers and sent them to Yemen. And they ended up mostly in refugee camps. Saudi was that angry that fucking Yemen didn't take a side in the Gulf War against Saddam. So there's a lot of tension going on, and that adds up on top of it. Your grandfather was one of them. What a small stream. Jesus. Wow. Yeah, and that seems to cause a lot of issues. He came back home. Okay. Yeah, that causes a lot of tension, just like multiple different reasons. And the other problem was that in the unification of Yemen, one thing that hadn't happened was a consolidation of military powers. I think the North and South militaries were still kind of separate. So, yeah, they had a war. Yeah, this guy here fucked off out of Yemen as a protest against the political system. So there was like a tank battle at Sana'a in the capital. They bombed each other. Yeah, pretty bad civil war. It didn't last very long, but the northern forces basically crushed the South. Actually, it seemed to be like the world powers, the US, the Russians, the UN, all tried to broker a ceasefire, but it failed. And this guy, President Saleh, who came from the north, takes control over all of Yemen. he declares amnesty to people who fought in the war, apart from like 16 people. And then he gives himself he gets a 5-year term. I think not democratically elected at that point. I think he's elected through like an appointee system. But he gets a 5-year term in 94, but he ends up staying president until 2012. And I don't know exactly how legit this is, but he wins an election in like 99 with about 96% of the vote. So probably guy just exceeds his mandate like pretty hard. And I don't actually know if those elections were legit. I don't think I have a feeling they weren't, but yeah. In any case, Saleh is quite corrupt. They do get like a bit of like a windfall. Like in this gray bit here, this is part of the Saudi agreement with Yemen. Saudi still was like not very friendly with Yemen at this point. So as part of the 2000 treaty, the Jeddah Treaty, that Saudi basically drew this border up, and Yemen got a hold of this land as well. So that's why this is gray. This became part of Yemen later. And throughout Saleh's rule, basically, you've got a few problems. You've got corruption, you've got economic inequality, you've got poor representation between the North and the South, you've got divides between the highlands and the coastal people, you've got fucking insurgencies, you've got like Al-Qaeda are quite present here, especially when Saleh declared himself an ally of America during the War of Terror. So there's a bit of an issue there that this Yemeni president is backing America in the War of Terror, and he's got Al-Qaeda people fighting around here. In 2004, you have a Shiite insurgency launched by a guy called Hussein Badreddin al-Houthi, no idea if I'm pronouncing that middle name right, who is the head of the Zaidi Shia sect in the north. And he establishes a bit of control in the north. And there are like riots happening constantly and bombings. There's lots and lots of suicide bombings and car bombings and shit like that. And actually, even Saleh uses Al-Qaeda to fight against the Houthis. And that's where the Houthis came from. Probably, again, the idea of just like taking what are quite legitimate grievances and having them addressed by the worst fucking leaders possible. It seems to be the case. There's a lot of US controversy in Yemen because Obama was ordered a few drone strikes in Yemen, one of which in 2009 was supposed to be on an Al-Qaeda training camp, but it ended up hitting a village, killing like 55 civilians. There were those 2 drone strikes in 2011 that killed 3 US citizens. So yeah, there's a good reason, I think, for these people to be quite anti-America. And quite anti the government. So when the Arab Spring happens, and there's a lot of poverty, there's unemployment, and especially around 2011, that period, Saleh, who is still president, was trying to change the constitution so that his son could inherit the presidency. And yeah, if you do that, and there's strong opposition, you're basically fucked. So he opened fire on protesters in 2011, killing like 50 people. There were dozens more people killed in like other riots and like very aggressive policing. So he eventually fucks off to Saudi. He flees. His deputy is put into power, but his deputy struggles to hold on. Saleh actually comes back and gives himself immunity, or is granted immunity, tries to give his son control over the military and security forces. And again, Al-Qaeda, like, no one likes that. And Al-Qaeda like suicide bombs the presidential palace, and like there are multiple car bombings. And at this period, this is when the Houthis come into prominence, because the battle, I think, throughout the Arab Spring was when these authorities were fighting mostly against Al-Qaeda. And they did push Al-Qaeda out to like this area here that Al-Qaeda had, the Shabwa Governorate in the kind of like central south. But Al-Qaeda are kind of like pushed into almost like irrelevancy. And then once they focus their efforts on Al-Qaeda, this is when the Houthis start to become really, really prominent, because people hate the government. They hated that the government supports America. They hate Al-Qaeda is out of the way. And then the Houthis establish a whole bunch of control around here. They win a battle in Sana'a, the capital, and Amran. And then they start to very quickly rush through a lot of this like Northern Highlands area. I think if you look at the map now, Yemen map control. Yeah, you gotta get this. You eventually lead up to this, with the Houthis controlling this area here. And in that takeover, the Houthis had so many enemies. Once the Houthis won over the capital and this whole area here, the Saudis led an intervention to try and get rid of the Houthis. And that coalition involved it involved Saudi, it involved the Emirates, it involved Sudan, when they were still Sudan, Bahrain, Kuwait, Qatar, Egypt, Jordan, Morocco, like Senegal, yeah, all these fucking countries. And it was supported by like the Western powers, Canada, UK, US, France. So many different Arab countries wanted to fuck off the Houthis. But they still managed to take over all the way to the south. They even actually got close, I think, to taking over Aden in 2015. Or maybe they did, but they got pushed back. I don't know. Don't remember. Yeah, the Gulf countries did not like the Houthis, but the Houthis survived. They survived Saudi bombings and all that shit, despite not being very well armed compared to them at all. Hadi, who was supposed to be like the alternative Yemeni president, managed to reclaim like some parts over time, but in 2022, Hadi lost support from the Saudi coalition because I think the fact is that this war has been going on for like 10 years. And I think the Saudis have just kind of given up on trying to defeat the Houthis. I think the consensus is that the Houthis are here to stay. And then that also leads me to think a lot about what America is doing now, because the Saudis, oh God, like learning about the Saudi military and the Saudi fucking attempts to reclaim Yemen for the government is like, I don't know if they just had shit weaponry or they just didn't care, but like their targeting was like insanely inaccurate. They were like a really, really scuffed attempts, and they killed a whole bunch of fucking civilians. Like I think there was a stat that was like only 25% of Saudi strikes actually hit a target. Like the other ones actually just missed or hit civilians. And this is like one of the strongest militaries in the Middle East, or like one of the like the powerhouse. So, yeah. And the Houthis in that period, they got support from Iran, and they managed, and obviously they adopted a very similar slogan to Iran, like "Death to America, Death to Israel, a curse upon the Jews, victory to Islam." Yeah. The idea of like child soldiers, like from everything I've read about child soldiers, that's like definitely true. The Houthis do recruit soldiers. The ways that they recruit soldiers are, I think, a bit disputed. I think in some cases it's just like, oh, you were orphaned by a Saudi bomb, come join the Houthis. That's quite easy. Or it's extortion, or it's like threats against their families. There are some reports. I don't know if I trust these ones because of the sources they come from, but I've heard some people say that that they'll like fucking rape kids and like film them and then threaten to show it to like the community or the public or whatever, and then that's how they keep them as soldiers. Maybe that one's true. I don't know if that, I would pinch of salt with that one. That sounds mental, but definitely child soldiers. They definitely do that. They intercept a lot of refugees or immigrants from Ethiopia coming through here seeking asylum, and put them into like very, very harsh detention centers. And I'm pretty sure there's a forced labor system there as well. In any case, the stuff, again, the slavery stuff I think is disputed because I think it's only like there are very few reports that actually talk about that. Same with the thing. Like, again, that's like, there's not many reports that talk about that. So those two, pinch of salt, but the rest of it, like detaining and abusing the fuck out of refugees from Ethiopia, no free press, child soldier, like all that's true. Like all that's true. They deported like the last handful of Jewish families from Yemen in like 2014 or 15. Yeah. Which is interesting because that old Zaidi Shiite ruler, what was actually seen as a protector of the Jews. Was it that guy? Hang on. I'm actually just kind of like, I'm mostly just saying this all now to refresh myself as well. What? It was a year and a half ago. Oh, okay, it was recently. Okay. What was this guy? No, this guy. No, this guy. Uh, no, before him. Yeah, before this guy, Imam Yahya took over the northern parts of Yemen. This guy was actually seen as a protector of the Jews. Who was the? There was someone before him, I think, who deported a bunch of them to the desert, though. Who was that? Let me see. Oh, that was the 1600s. Yeah, so the old, like the Greater Yemen. Yeah. So back in Greater Yemen, like the 1600s, that leader, that regime, yeah, they like it was like in 1600 something, like between the 16 and 1700s. That was when a bunch of Yemen's Jews, like basically as many as they could find, were deported and sent up to this like desert area up here by the coast. And that was a thing as well. But yeah, the old like Zaidi leader from the like 100 years ago, Imam Yahya, he seemed to be like pro-Jew, I guess, or like he was seen as a protector. But you had anti-Semitism emerging in the 40s, and that resulted in like a magic carpet operation where most of the Jews fucked off. There's also like this whole thing about like religious conversions as well, because I think when Islam came to Yemen, a lot of people just like willingly converted. A lot of those converts as well were Jews when in the 7th century. So it's quite strange to think that like there could be like multiple, like plausibly there are like multiple Houthi fighters saying like a curse upon the Jews and all that, who are descended from Jews who had converted to Islam like over 1,000 years ago. I just think it's really crazy to think of. But so the one thing I want to know is I want to know, yeah, same. It's the same with Palestinians as well. Yeah, I want to know about. Goy. I want to know about if there's any connection between Imam Yahya and the Houthis, because they're both Zaidi from the Zaidi tribe, I think, like that sect, and they're both from the north, the Northern Highlands. I just want to know if there's any connection, and they're both like Islamic, like theocrats and whatever. Yeah, I don't know. I want to know the connection there because I haven't been able to find exactly if they're associated with it. Yeah, I don't know. If anyone knows the answer to that, you're more than welcome to share it with the class. Anyway, that's my summary so far about Yemen. That's what I know now. Definitely need to flesh out a lot, but that's where we are now, you guys. Also, Imam Yahya had the coolest fucking house. Oh my god. This guy's house was a fucking banger. Look at this, dude. Look at this house. It's like staying on top of a fucking rock and shit with stairs going up to it. And I think this house is still there. It's in Sana'a, right? What a G. It's Airbnb right now. Do you think that's where the crew are staying, taking cat, having a great time? The crew of that mysterious fucking. I need to. Okay, so that's where I am now. Now I think what I need to do is dig a bit more into contemporary stuff. Maybe the details of the war with Saudi as well, and the Emirates and the government. Yeah. Because as it stands right now, I think the Houthis govern about 2/3 of the population in these areas. I want to know how popular they are, and how bad and imperialist their opposition is. I don't know. Let's have a look, though. There was also this thing I watched off stream that I wanted to Are they sectarian against Sunnis? I don't know. I don't know. Anyway. It's something we can always find out, though. Did you enjoy your little rundown, you guys? Your scuffed lesson on Yemeni history? Was that good? Was that soy? We're going to need to do a good bit more, though. Because I still feel like I don't know much at all about it. Like, we definitely need to do more expanding. You forgot to mention it was a Jewish kingdom at some point? Next server meetup in Yemen. Jesus. When was it a Jewish kingdom? Because there were some tribes that had like Christian and Jewish leaders. No, there was one big Jewish leader, wasn't there? Who was he though? Fuck. Sixth century. A guy called Dunuas. He was a Himyarite. Yeah. Apparently, there's a Muslim story about this guy, about this Jewish warlord in 6th century who marched 20,000 Christians into trenches that were filled with flaming oil. That's a story. This dude. And he basically made enemies against Arab Christians and Aksum and Byzantium. Yeah, like just loads of different enemies. Yeah. But yeah, there was a Jewish warlord who was very oppressive of Christians. Yeah. There's also a place in Yemen called Mocha, which is around here, I think. Yeah, there's a whole bunch of shit going on. All right, around here, I think. But yeah, this guy, this dude. The Conqueror. Anyway. Was he a Jew or not? Interesting. Many coffee words come from Yemen. Oh. Yeah. Why is Yemeni coffee so good then? Because they were the first people to cultivate it. And at one point, for quite a while, they were the only people giving it to they were the only people cultivating it and providing it in world trade. The only large producer. Mm-hmm. Yeah, they had a monopoly on it, but I think it was like Dutch, British, and French. Was it people? Yeah, people who smuggled trees out. I think they actually just stole them. Like, it's hard to tell exactly what happened, but it seemed to be like the British and the Dutch were just like stealing coffee trees and taking them to plant them up in fucking in the East Indies and like Africa and the West Indies. Yeah. Is it cultural appropriation for non-Yemenis to drink coffee? Yeah. Well, I mean, Ethiopians were the first ones to actually like find out that it worked to make a drink out of it, but I don't think Ethiopia were the first ones like properly cultivating it for like, because obviously cultivating is different from just taking some beans off of a fucking tree, right? Let's look at the history of coffee, shall we? See what they say. The legend. This is the guy feeding his goats. Coffee cultivation and trade began on the Arabian Peninsula. By the 15th century, it was being grown in the Yemeni district of Arabia. By the 16th century, Persia, Egypt, Syria, Turkey. Yeah. But yeah, it was discovered in Ethiopia. In the coffee forests on the Ethiopian plateau. Legend says the goat herder Kaldi discovered coffee after he noticed that after eating the berries from a certain tree, his goats became so energetic that they did not want to sleep at night. Damn. Banging. That's so damn interesting. What does DeSantis pulling out mean for Trump? Does that mean it's easier for Trump? Probably. 'Cause I thought DeSantis was going to be like the big alternative, but he's just so shit and boring that, oh well, fail. Rip. Ethiopians would put coffee beans in a leather pouch tied around their neck, and their sweat would mix with the beans and make a form of coffee berry. Oh, interesting. Wow. That's weird. Just Trump and Nikki Haley. Can Nikki Haley be the rising tide against Trump? It would be funny if Republicans were the ones who got a first woman president. That would be incredible. It looks like, oh god, the incentive structure is so fucked here because I've noticed that I mean, this was definitely worth commenting on, so I don't feel that bad. That Hassan video is the most popular one on my channel now. Like, it's performing better than the Vosh conversation. You guys really wanted my opinions on Hassan interviewing that fucking dude. Yeah. I mean, you couldn't not talk about it though, right? I think even in the normie world, people are talking about that. Like people I just wouldn't have expected. Yeah, that's like a thing as well. Like normies are like, talking about the fact that a Houthi pirate got interviewed by a Twitch streamer or a potential Houthi pirate. I don't know. Oh, I wonder if the BBC will do a story about it. That would be based. I want to see British broadcasters try to explain that whole debacle. Pierce should have Hassan over to talk about the Houthi. That would be a good debate. Yeah. Pierce could. He's never stopped milking the content. Of course he should do that. Anyway, what am I looking for? Fuck. DW Yemen. Okay. Did Loner say why he took down his VODs? What VODs? I haven't taken down VODs. My stream VODs on YouTube? What are we talking about? What? You guys are weird. They're just unlisted. They're in a playlist. The Xander video, because it got it got removed because of bullying and harassment. I don't. I appealed it. They were like, "Sorry, this video is full of bullying and harassment." I'm like, "What the fuck did I say?" Anyway, I want to take some notes. Jesus Christ. Ugh. Where's that video I watched? This one. This is a good one. Okay.
The Houthis are attacking commercial ships in the Red Sea. This is in retaliation for the war in Gaza. Who are the Houthis? An armed political and religious rebel group from Yemen, backed by Iran. The US and the UK have called these attacks a direct threat to international commerce and maritime security. They have responded by jointly carrying out strikes on Houthi targets in Yemen. Germany and other European nations are also considering naval missions. Could this be the precursor to the next regional conflict, especially with key players like Iran and Saudi Arabia involved in this conflict? The impacts on global trade are already evident, leading to supply shortages and production halts. So today, on To The Point, we are discussing Houthi attacks on global trade. Is the Middle East conflict escalating?
Yeah. To the point.
Hello and welcome to The Point. I'm Isha Bhatia Sanan here in Berlin. And today we have three guests. Daniel Dylan Böhmer. He is senior editor at the German newspaper Die Welt. Next on the panel, we have Vondelin von Bredow. She is senior correspondent for the British magazine The Economist.
This fucking still fake. Oh my God.
And finally, we have Dr. Elizabeth Kendall joining us from London. She is the mistress of Girton College, Cambridge.
Looks like not so erudite. Nice one.
A very warm welcome to you all. Thank you for joining. Daniel, let's start with you. And let's start with the impacts of what's happening right now with these airstrikes in the Red Sea.
Well, the impacts on world economy are already there, although we don't feel them. Let's remember this route, the Red Sea, which the Houthis are currently having in a chokehold, is one of the most important shipping routes in world trade whatsoever. The trade that goes through there comprises about 15% of world trade. It's the main trade route between Asia.
Is it world trade or is it maritime trade? I just want to make sure I got all my facts. It says an estimated 12% of global trade. That all the trade? 12% of all the trade. Both. Shut the fuck up. What? It's really world trade. Okay. Really? That's crazy. It is world trade. He rounded up to 15, the sneaky bastard. Okay. All right. 12% of global trade is through the Red Sea every year. Worth more than $1 trillion. Okay. Sorry, I'll take my notes and put them up here as well. And maybe just picture-in-picture this, because I don't think I need the thing. Okay. Let's do it like this, guys. Let's get some bullshit. Okay. Now organize my stuff better. Ugh. That looks pretty, doesn't it? That looks aesthetically pleasing. And then I need to get this little linkage here and stick it in. Okay.
And Europe, so two of the most powerful players. The reason why we're not feeling the full extent of this choke is because the shipping lines that usually transport goods through the Red Sea are now taking away around Africa, which raises the cost of transports enormously by about 20 to 30%. But at the moment, shipping companies are taking these losses upon themselves. But if this goes on for a longer time, then they are liable to pass on these costs to their clients, and those clients, namely the companies who import goods, will pass them on to consumers at some point.
We should maybe just clarify it's 15% of world seaborne trade, not world trade in total, but the seaborne bit.
But this is going to be borne by the customers.
She said 25%. Okay. Okay. She corrected him, but she used a different number. Okay.
Ultimately, as Mr. Böhmer said, if the conflict continues, and it looks like that this might be the case, yes. At the moment, shipping companies are absorbing it, and companies are absorbing it, but this is relatively new. So as the weeks go by, yes, of course, we will all be affected by it.
Right. Now, before we get into the details of global trade and what's going to happen and how the prices are going to increase, I'd like to go to Elizabeth. Elizabeth, now, we know the Houthis have been active since the 1990s. We know that they've been targeting the cargo ships since the last couple of months. But if you could just put things in perspective for us, in context, who are the Houthis exactly and why are they so relevant?
The Houthis are a group that emerged in the northwest of Yemen. That's just a corner of a vast country, so they might not seem that important. But over the past 10 years, almost 10 years, during a civil war that's been raging in Yemen, the Houthis have managed to take over territory in which about 2/3 of the Yemeni population lives. So that's about 20 million people. And they're a religious group, a political group, a military group, all at the same time. And their politics is very much informed by their religious outlook. Their political arm is called Ansar Allah, which means supporters, partisans of God. And their slogan is very similar to that of Iran, with whom they also share a Shi'i-based Islamic faith. I should just say that the Houthis do have a slightly different brand of Shi'ism, but they have the same slogan, death to America, death to Israel, a curse on the Jews, and victory to Islam. So having them in that area of Yemen that's so heavily populated, feeling confident after, 9 years of civil war and well-armed and supplied by Iran, that's a very dangerous moment for us.
Thank you. Now, I know we could have a whole show on who the Houthis are and how it started and what's happening right now. So thank you very much for very briefly explaining us what it is. And this is a very crucial route.
When they say an additional 1 million, is this the cost for one ship, for one vessel to go for an extra 10 days? If you're thinking about fuel, wages, different port of call, extra auditing for that. Yeah, really? What the fuck? All right. The trade route is used by roughly 1/3 of global container ship cargo and redirecting ships around the southern tip of Africa. Expected to cost up to 1 million extra in fuel for every round trip. Wow. Million extra in fuel. What the fuck? Oh no. Not there. There we go.
So the American and British naval forces in the Red Sea have launched a series of strikes against Houthi rebel targets across Yemen. US President Joe Biden has said he will not hesitate to take further military action if necessary. But the US has also made clear that it does not want to see a widening conflict in the Middle East.
Uh-oh.
Fighter jets are taking off. Their targets? The Houthi militia in Yemen. Claiming self-defense, the USA, Great Britain, and other allies are launching dozens of assaults against the Houthis, who are attacking international merchant ships on the Red Sea. The EU is backing the military operation with a naval mission set to stabilize the situation in the Red Sea. Germany also wants to participate by sending a frigate. Thousands of people have taken to the streets in Yemen to protest Israel and the USA, who they see as the real aggressors. And Houthi leadership is showing signs that they are willing to escalate. The American and British enemies bear full responsibility for this criminal aggression against us and our Yemeni people. This will not go unpunished or The Shiite Houthi militia supported by Iran controls large parts of Yemen. Since the beginning of the Gaza war, the Houthis have positioned themselves as allies of Hamas. Are the U.S. and its allies falling into a geopolitical trap in Yemen?
Let's go back to Elizabeth again. Elizabeth, do you think the West is falling in a geopolitical trap in Yemen?
It's really a strong possibility. Now, we have to understand that the West is in a dilemma. The US especially. This is really hard because on the one hand, they don't want to get embroiled in another war in the Middle East. But on the other, they've run out of options other than military options. They've tried sanctions, they've tried curbing the flow of funds to the Houthis. They've tried this international maritime force in the Red Sea as a deterrent, and they've been batting away missiles and drones. But it really hasn't done any good. So now we've moved to a situation of direct military action. And I don't think it's going to work out well. So yes, in that sense, it is a trap. We have to remember that the Houthis, after 9 years of war, have already sustained over 25,000 airstrikes by Saudi Arabia. And it didn't make that much difference. Also, they're hardened fighters. They've managed to keep at bay two of the Middle East's best invested militaries, Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates, for the best part of a decade. And of course, it's an asymmetric war. You know, it's worth just thinking that the US weaponry is extremely expensive and it needs to be accurate. Our targeting must be accurate. Whereas the Houthis, they can just carry on with much cheaper weaponry, and it doesn't matter if they're accurate. As your two guests have pointed out, just creating disruption in the Red Sea, that's enough to ultimately impact global markets.
You mentioned Saudi Arabia. Now, I know Saudi Arabia has been trying to push them back since 2015, and now we have US and UK. So there must have been some calculations behind it that if Saudi Arabia has not managed to do it since 2015, what is it that makes US and UK to take these actions right now? I mean,
is America's goal to destroy the Houthis, or is their goal just to weaken their capabilities to attack vessels in the sea? I didn't think they were trying to wipe out the Houthis. I thought they were just trying to stop them from attacking ships. Yeah, okay.
one strike or two, they're not really going to.
But maybe that might even not be because maybe they might just bolster the Houthis and make them more popular by bombing. Yeah, I don't know.
Help.
Well, I think there are a couple of elements here. Number one, the US will have better targeting abilities. The Saudi Arabian strikes were not always that well targeted, but according to the Yemen Data Project, only about a third of Saudi strikes actually hit a target. But the second thing at play here is I think that the United States and UK felt that they would look weak if they didn't respond. And of course,
and another third hit civilian sites. One in 3 Saudi air raids on Yemen hit civilian sites, data shows. More than 1/3 of all Saudi-led air raids on Yemen have hit civilian sites. Yemen data is the same thing she's talking about, right? When she's saying actually hit a target, is she actually just referring to this? Because where are they saying hit a target? Is it just like 1/3 civilians, 1/3 targets, and the rest? I don't know. I don't think the Houthis are the same as Hamas in the fact that every military target is also. I think they separate their military, don't they? I think. $8,600 air attacks. Here we go. See, it's a third each way. So they have separated military from non-military sites. Where will I put that in? Houthi, Saudi war. I know there are more factions involved, but this is quite interesting. Only 1/3 of Saudi strikes hit military targets. Another third. Say 2015 to 2016. Military sites. Okay.
The opposite is also true, and perhaps this wasn't well thought through, because they also look weak if they do respond and it makes little difference. It could also have just been a bit of a miscalculation.
Check the Yemen data project. Okay. Oh. They have all kinds of shit here. Okay. I thought the number of dead in Yemen was far higher than this. I guess this is just from strikes, though. Air raids. Air raids per month. They went up in 2022 and then down. Okay. Oh, here we go. Oh, yeah. 20,000 casualties, 9,000 dead. And this is just as a result of coalition strikes, right? Oh, wait, this is in a year. 8,000? What's this? Total. What do we total? Huh? Or is this for up? What the fuck? That's just giving me the same thing for everything. What else we got here? Oh, yeah, that would be right. 10 years. Okay. If they're saying coalition air raids, this does just mean like Saudi coalition, like not Houthis. So they're not saying how many people were killed by the Houthis, right? Yeah, the Saudi-led coalition. Okay. Yemen data project. Air raids. 10,000. Whoa, not 2,500. Wow. Injured. 8. Say 9,000. Dead. Okay.
On the part of the US and UK, perhaps they thought that a show of force would hold the Houthis back. I think that's wrong, because the Houthis actually stand to gain from these strikes. The reason I say that is that it feeds directly into their narratives of the United States as an aggressor in the region wanting to launch a war against Islam. So that is how they will pitch it. And to many people, that is how it will look.
Thank you. So a miscalculation maybe from the West side. Daniel, how do you see it? There was also a calculation from the Houthi side, as Elizabeth mentioned. They seem to be profiting from this. So they knew that if they attack in the Red Sea, they're going to get attacked in response to that. How do you see the whole scenario?
I think the Houthis are gaining from the situation on total. Elizabeth is completely right. Before that, they were one of the warring parties in Yemen. Now the Houthis have become Arab superstar. by seeming that small militia that is taking up the huge military might of both America and the seemingly invincible Israel. They've gained a lot of status. And I think Iran is also gaining because they show the kind of blackmailing potential they have through this position on the Red Sea. But I wouldn't go so far as to say that the West is miscalculating.
Oh, we have a new bit of information here, apparently. Apparently someone's saying that Israel has funded Hamas. Interesting. That might be new. Okay, we'll see.
There. The West had to step in, not least because of the economic interests there. And it is Western companies that are demanding from the West to do something about it. And also, if you look at it from an international perspective, it can't be permitted that a small militia cuts off such vital trade routes. It had to be done. And in that way, the West was also able to co-opt powers to its Middle East strategy, which wouldn't be part of Western Middle East strategy so far. There is a United Nations Security Council resolution backing these attacks on the Houthis. So that means that China and Russia are in with the West in this, who normally are rather on the side of Iran. So although there is no military solution to the Houthi problem, I think the West has gone in the right direction, and it has actually garnered support for that.
We do see a lot of players, China, Russia, we have Middle East, the US, UK, Europe. How do you see the situation? Would you say that the current situation is a result of mismanagement of the Yemen crisis by the US?
I wouldn't say that, because until now the US has not played a huge role in the Yemen crisis. I think what we are seeing now, there's a lot of debate about whether the conflict is escalating in the region. I think it has escalated, so we are seeing that. The question now is how much, and how much more will the US be prepared to intervene? So we are, I think, at quite a crucial point of the whole conflict, and the hope, of course, is that it will at least remain stable.
You said it has escalated. Do you think it's beyond control now, or can it still be contained, the situation?
I think it can still be contained, but it's it's a conflict beyond the Gaza conflict, which is how it started, right? So there's so many different areas in the region where where conflict has erupted, in northern Israel, in Yemen, in the Red Sea, wherever you look, there's sort of something going on.
Daniel, now Houthis, like Hamas, apparently have an intricate network of tunnels. How difficult is it for the US to target them? Like we heard from Elizabeth that the US is better equipped than Saudis, of course, in this case. But still, how difficult?
God, if only like Saddam or the Taliban or whoever else got fucking overthrown in the past, like thought of tunnels, eh? What a world we'd be living in now.
Would it be to target them, especially considering the civilian population in mind?
Saddam had like a dog shit tunnel. What are you talking about? Like, tunnels are OP. No one thought. Who thought of this?
Oh, it's incredibly difficult to target them. There is so far only one means that the US have, and that is aerial warfare. And there is no scenario for which the Houthis are better prepared than aerial warfare. They've been hiding and defending themselves against Saudi airstrikes for years and years. And it's true that the Saudis are very inaccurate with their bombing because they have very little practice.
It's actually quite funny that you look at a lot of these these kind of like chud, like these rightoid accounts that are talking about how the Houthis are going to get wiped out and all this like American triumphalism. Is that Visegrad fucking thing, showing that picture of the Valley of Death or whatever the fuck it's called, the Road of Death, from the Gulf War. And they're just like, do these people actually think that the United States and the British coalition is actually going to just destroy the Houthis? Like, what the fuck are we talking about here? Yeah, I feel like the Houthis can handle, they can handle quite a lot. The Highway of Death, yeah. I feel like there's still quite a bit of like Western hubris from these kind of more right-wing like hawks,
This is why pilots used to fly very, very high in order to protect themselves. And that made those airstrikes so inaccurate and so terrible for the civilian population. The Americans are better at that, but the
motorway of
Houthis
death.
are very mobile. They move their units very quickly from one point to the other in order to hide their missiles and rockets. And they have this training. It will help them tremendously also against the Americans. There's no way that the Americans will eradicate the Houthis.
They're very well trained. They have backing from Iran. Elizabeth, Iran has denied having any connections with the attacks. Iran says we do support Houthis, but only politically. Is anyone really buying that argument?
I don't think anyone is buying that argument. It's certainly true that the Houthis are enthusiastic for these attacks for their own reasons. It works very well for them domestically. It plays to their base. It wins them broader support, actually. It's one of the
Looks good on social media, eh? Am I wrong?
most popular things the Houthis have done over the past decade. And of course, it increases their leverage with Saudi Arabia, who is trying to extract itself from the Yemeni civil war. And internationally, it's brought them more publicity than anything else. But they would not be able to operate at this level were it not for Iranian supply of much more sophisticated weaponry, training, and also intelligence.
What does social media popularity get them practically? Probably helps their base at home, no? Again, I need to do more research on this to see how much of a trend it is. I know it's the case with Hamas. You know how Hamas were struggling with popularity before October 7th, and when they did October 7th, people started to like them again. I wonder if it's the case with the Houthis as well, that they might have been, that because they weren't fighting with the Saudis anymore, or a lot less, then there might have been a lot less interest in them, is because they're a militant group, right? And if you're a militant group, you kind of lose a lot of your appeal if you're not fighting. So maybe the Houthis saw an opportunity in the war in Gaza and thought they can fight there. And then that will provoke a response that gets them social media support, that gets them domestic support, that gets them, that makes them look good in the world state. Yeah, I don't know. I think that probably makes sense, no? I know that was the case with Hezbollah. I know Lebanese Christians didn't like Hezbollah until Hezbollah started fighting with Israel. And then they were like, hey, these guys, hello. Yeah, that kind of shit, yeah.
I much agree with what Daniel has said. I think the Houthis are able to cope with these attacks against them. They might be degraded, but they don't have to be sophisticated in order to continue to disrupt, and they have a lot of experience of that. What I think they have calculated is that the US is extremely unlikely to get into a boots-on-the-ground situation in Yemen for a couple of reasons. First, they've seen that the US was retreating rather shamefully and shambolically from Afghanistan. They didn't do that well in Iraq either, and it's unlikely that they would want to get in, therefore, to Yemen in an election year. So I think that the Houthis have probably got time on their side and also support on their side, at least until something can be done about Israel and Gaza, and therefore take the moral high ground away from them.
Mm-hmm. Now, Elizabeth mentioned the election year. What is Biden's strategy going to be like? It's a very crucial year for Biden.
It is a crucial year, and he has to focus on domestic politics and on his base, on his voters. But he could not respond, right, to the attacks on international shipping. So in that sense, I think he's done the right thing, and he will continue to do that as long as the Houthis continue to attack international vessels, and certainly the ones American flag, but I think just more generally. So that's, I think, what he's going to do. He will, as long as there's this tit for tat, he will continue to do what the Americans are doing now.
China has not responded to this, but India has. The Indian foreign minister talked to Iran about it and has raised grave concerns. Now, do you think that will make any difference in the situation, in the conflict?
Unfortunately, I don't think it will make much of a difference. India raising great concerns. No, I don't think so.
Daniel?
I think India in itself, maybe not, although they have been receiving Iranian oil at the time of sanctions. So they are a customer for Iran, even though those deliveries were mainly under the radar. What I think is more decisive here is China. Although China hasn't commented on the Houthi situation itself, China has started criticizing Iran's actions. Think about the bombings in Pakistan conducted by Iran, which we have lately seen.
Right.
China has condemned that. And that's decisive because both Pakistan and Iran are key allies to China in its Middle East strategy. So we also see that China is unable to keep order even among its own allies. And the economic situation with the disruption of Euro-Asian trade, that's a major economic factor for China, which is in a bad state economically. So China will be likely to step in at some point if this goes on for much longer.
I think that last point is very important. The economy is not in great shape. 5% of growth is very low by Chinese standards, and for he to remain as strong as he is now, he's already weakened by the economic problems at home. So he will want to contain this, and so I think the Chinese will step in sooner rather than later.
And they were already part of the Security Council resolution on the Houthis, so they are starting to step in, even though, interestingly, following the United States, not replacing them as a provider of order.
So India has, China will probably, Indian businesses are majorly hit by the attacks in the Red Sea, as 80% of its exports to Europe take place via this route. And it's not just India. About 17,000 ships go through the Suez Canal every year, amounting to $1 trillion worth of goods. So the impact on supply chains seems inevitable.
Ships are the target. Whether containers or tankers, Houthi rebels are attacking and capturing merchant vessels, then kidnapping their crews along the Red Sea, the main route between Europe and Asia. Every year, a third of the world's container shipments pass this way. Now, ships are avoiding the Red Sea by sailing around Africa, a 5,000-kilometer detour that more than doubles the journey's time. An expensive deviation that's increased the cost per container by at least 50%. Large companies are complaining about their first supply bottlenecks, including Tesla in Brandenburg. The assembly lines at the plant near Berlin have been at a near standstill for 2 weeks due to a shortage of batteries from China. According to internal information from the European External Action Service, the economic damage caused by the Houthi rebel attacks currently amounts to around 360 million euros per hour. How much damage are the Houthi attacks causing to global trade?
360 million euros per hour. That's actually your calculation. That's quite a bit. Is this going to be the new normal?
Well, to be quite exact.
Is that what they said? 360 million euros per hour. That was the number that I said as well. Yeah, I didn't hear them wrong last time I watched this.
Supply bottlenecks, including Tesla in Brandenburg. The assembly lines at the plant near Berlin have been at a near standstill for 2 weeks due to a shortage of batteries from China. According to internal information from the European External Action Service, the economic damage caused by the Houthi rebel attacks currently amounts to around 360 million euros per hour. How much damage are the Houthi attacks causing to global trade?
Cost of the crisis Red Sea. Okay. Where's that online? European External. Do these guys have a website, or who the fuck are these guys? Let's see. The European External Action Service. Where are they talking about? It was his calculation, so. Who's he, though? Let's see. Cost of Red Sea crisis, EEAS. Let's see. 2022, no. Politico, old article. Euronews. Oh, joint statement on Houthi attacks. Is this it? Oh. Euronews. I don't know where that article's coming from. Cost. I don't know. What is this? Joint statement on the Red Sea. This is from those guys, 25-member international crew. I guess I could just reference the video. By Die Welt. 360 million euros. Did they say euros? Houthis. Oh, this is from WordPress. Okay. Where are you getting it from, Mr. WordPress? Mr. Blogger? What the fuck is this page, bro? Oh. Why is that incognito? What the fuck? Don't give me incognito. I want normal window. Come here. All right. Translate to English, please. Okay. There we go. Okay, cool. Got it. All right. The attacks costing in euros per hour. Okay.
€360 million per hour. That's actually your calculation. That's quite a bit. Is this going to be the new normal?
Well, to be quite exact, it was a calculation that my newspaper got knowledge of that was made within the European External Action Service, but we were the ones lucky enough to report it first. It's, of course, a tremendous sum. It's about billions every day. And if you also think about the structural impact, the kinds of goods that are affected by that, you see the magnitude of that. Remember that most microchips that are built into any goods whatsoever come from Asia, most of them from Taiwan. And these deliveries also use the route through the Red Sea. Now, think of all those goods, of all those devices today that contain microchips. That goes back even to household goods.
And we saw what happened in COVID time.
Exactly. Yeah. And if this is disrupted, then the impact is huge on the whole economy.
Right. The detour is leading to an extra 10 days of shipping time. And the extra time means extra cost for the companies. And the extra cost will obviously be borne by the consumers. So should we prepare ourselves for a global price hike of consumer goods?
Yes, we should prepare ourselves for that. And this comes at a time when inflation, at least in Europe, has just sort of started to go down a little bit and people were breathing a sigh of relief. So it's not a good time, but I think we need to prepare ourselves for exactly that.
And what about oil prices? There's a lot of speculation about that as well.
Same here. We need to be prepared for higher oil prices, higher prices for petrol. It's not a very cheerful prospect, sadly.
We need to be prepared for bad times. Elizabeth, now the Houthis have warned that they will continue doing this for as long as the war in Gaza goes on. Will this warning backfire, or do you think there's any chance of this leading to a ceasefire?
No, I think this is very, very unlikely. A ceasefire is not something that the Houthis are looking for. They are, in fact, still recruiting. And they're recruiting on the back of what's happening in Gaza. They're promising to send their new recruits to help Palestinians, but in fact, they are being deployed to fronts around Yemen. This does not look like a group that's seeking peace. Now, although a United Nations-led political process looks like it's on the cards, in fact, now that the Houthis have just been designated a terrorist group by the United States, that process could be in jeopardy, and the Houthis, if they're not in that political process, will likely continue their war. I see their ambition as going south towards the Bab el-Mandeb Strait, and therefore I think that this is going to be a long war. They have youth on their side too. So there won't be any end to this disruption.
But for how long can this sustain? I mean, Yemen is going through a humanitarian crisis.
That's right. But the Houthis they have quite a high tolerance for casualties and for misery inflicted on their populations. And one also has to remember that they have been at war for almost 20 years, if you count the civil wars in the north of Yemen from 2004. And so this is a group that has seen war as a way of life. And with a youth population where over 50% of them are under the age of 20, and so will have only known war. And that means that it's going to be a long haul trying to disengage that young population that suffered propaganda from the war and indoctrination camps over the summers. Unless the US targets really successfully and manages to degrade an enormous amount of Houthi equipment, and they haven't hidden underground, and none of that, as I see happening, then I don't see how this will end anytime soon.
So this is going to be a long war. Is there any other route possible? Just your last thoughts. We are at the end of the show.
Hopefully, well, the war will for sure almost certainly take as long as the conflict in the Gaza continues. So if there is any resolution anytime soon, there's a good chance that it could end. But sadly, it doesn't look that way.
So we have to prepare for high prices, oil and consumer goods?
Yes, although I agree that the war itself will go on for a long time, it need not affect the world economy for a long time, because the sponsors of the Houthis, China, Iran mainly, will not tolerate this on the pressure of China.
Thank you. So this is going to be a long war. That's all the time we have. What do you think about the attacks in the Red Sea? If you're watching us on YouTube, do let us know your thoughts. Goodbye.
Okay. We have a debate. Okay. Hang on one second. Yes. Okay, tell you what, I'm going to take, hang on. Just want to see what'll be quicker, though. All right. Morty, if Morty and his guy are ready now, then we can do that, and then I'm going to talk to someone else later. All right, let's do that. I think we'll go that way. Hello, Morty. Hello? I don't know if his opponent's here, though. Or if he can hear me. I hope he can. Ooh. Destiny clip. Why not? Okay. Why? What's this? Oh, it's denims. Okay.
People always ask, what do I do? Because we always want to know what to do. Do we vote? Do we support a politician? Do we join an organization? What do we do?
What do we do?
I'll tell you what we do. It's simple. We fight. We fight and we fight and we fight and we shut down our workplaces. We shut down our schools. We shut down the streets.
Oh, okay.
We shut down business as usual. And we fight until we force the people in there to do what the people out here want. Because that's how we're going to get around, and we're going to fight until there's not one more bomb dropped, not one more bullet fired, not one more soldier coming home in a wheelchair, not one more family slaughtered, not one more day.
Is that true, Phil?
What did Phil say? Is that true? Phil.
What are we watching?
Oh my God. Yeah, this is the only person that's allowed to be married to Abby Martin, I think, actually.
Why are we? I don't know. Someone said there's a clip
Phil?
worth watching. I'm like, what?
Yeah. Yeah,
Why?
actually. I think Abby Martin is the only person that
Philith.
deserves to be married to this guy, and this guy is the only person that deserves to be married to Abby Martin.
Well, what my disc? What the fuck's happening? Wait. Why do I hear a noise? Is my Discord set to a different fucking audio channel? What the fuck? Why? What the fuck happened? My audio interface went mental. Hey, Morty, sorry. You there?
Yeah.
My
Hello?
fucking audio just switched to my... Oh, that was weird. It's like your voice is coming out my monitors. All right, where's your opponent?
Sorry, what?
Is your
Can you
opponent
repeat?
is your opponent ready?
I don't know. I hope so.
Okay.
Well, he was told that it should be happening today.
All right.
Would be good for me to know how long he wants to intend to do this, because I'm currently
LonerBox,
at the
you
airport.
smarmy
All right.
fuck bastard.
And I need to get picked
I was talking to my mum about the
at
SA genocide
some
case,
time.
and she said they were light-skinned Palestinian
So
kids.
it would be
She
nice to know
specified
how long
light-skinned,
he intends
that
to
Israel had kidnapped,
do this.
like
Okay.
the Russians did. Is this true?
I might have someone else on for like maybe like half an hour or an hour now. Then, and then you guys can figure out what's going on with starting this. If that's okay, or is that too late?
Gonna be pretty late for me because it's already like close to 11.
Well,
and
if you're getting stood up, remember there's always other days, so don't worry. But I guess I'll give it a few more minutes to see if he shows up, and if he doesn't, then we'll just go somewhere else. Okay.
Yeah, then it's good for me because then I can call the driver and he can pick me up, like, no problem.
Okay, all good. I'll put you in the. You can go wherever. Okay.
Yep.
All right. Take care. Okay. Swan Star, thanks for the £10. What did you say? I was talking to my mom about the South African genocide case. She said there were light-skinned Palestinian kids that Israel kidnapped, like the Russians did. Is this true? If there's an article, I could see that. That would be a war crime or whatever. That's the same crime that Putin's been accused of, isn't it? So if they've done that, then that would be pretty fucking awful. So yeah, let's see. I'm trying to organize now, but they can't go. Why are we watching this? Let's see. This better be fucking content.
Holy
Our own
base,
site
dude.
chat?
This is
Oh,
like finding
sure.
out that okay, it's not, but just pretend like it is. Obamna, thank you for the tier 1. This is like finding out that
Ew.
the lady who made the mangaka who made Sailor Moon is married to the mangaka who made Hunter x Hunter.
Obamna.